This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.
The time is precisely 6:15. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Here's the news edited by Dulvin Samarasinghe and read by Ramesh Pires. First, the headlines. The President presents scroll to the Mahanayaka of Sri Lanka Amarapura Mahanikaya. The Central Expressway from Birigama to Kurunegala will be open to the public tomorrow. The police entrusted with the responsibility of all railway stations. Plans made to operate train services minimizing hardships to the commuters. The Ceylon Petroleum Corporation decides to deliver 1,500 metric tons of diesel to the Ceylon Electricity Board daily. The police launch extensive investigations into the finding of a hand grenade from a church in Borella. The SLFP General Secretary says his party has not decided to leave the government. And in news overseas, the UK Prime Minister's staff accused of more lockdown parties. In sports, Australia revokes tennis star Novak Djokovic's visa for a second time. And now the local news in detail. The ceremony to confer Agamaha Pandita Abhidaja Maharattaguru Kammattanacharya title on the Mahanayaka of Sri Lanka Amarapura Mahanikaya, Most Venerable Dodam Pahala Chandasiri Thera, took place this afternoon at the BMICH in Colombo. The Mahasangha, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa and a distinguished gathering were present on the occasion. Deputy Registrar of Amarapura Mahasangha Sabha, Venerable Dr. Madampagama Assaji Tissa Thera read out the scroll. Thereafter, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa presented the Thera with the scroll. The President also launched the official website of the Sri Lanka Amarapura Mahanikaya. Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa presented the Thera with Vijanapatha. Opposition leader Sajit Premadasa made Apta Parisakara Puja to the Thera. The Railway General Manager Dhammika Jayasundara says shortage of engine drivers and guards is obstructing train services. He said there is a shortage of 150 engine drivers. He further said that some train services had to be cancelled as a result. Mr. Jayasundara also said Public Services Commission has suspended recruitment on contract basis. He said steps would be taken to get permission to recruit them on contract basis to meet the shortage. Short while ago, the Station Masters Union has called off the strike. The State Minister Dilum Amanugama says that steps were taken to entrust the responsibility of railway stations with police due to Station Masters strike. He said all police stations have been informed in this regard through the IGP. Meanwhile, Railway General Manager Dhammika Jayasundara said measures have been taken to maintain train services at minimum levels to minimize hardships on commuters. He said 14 train services had to be cancelled due to the trade union action. The Ceylon Petroleum Corporation has decided to deliver 1,500 metric tons of diesel to the Ceylon Electricity Board daily until January 18th. The chairman, Sumit Vijaysingham, said further action would be taken following a discussion scheduled on that day. The Ceylon Petroleum Corporation earlier said it can no longer provide fuel to the Ceylon Electricity Board on credit basis. This news broadcast comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.
Sisudana from People's Bank. Give your child the strength to succeed.
The Inspector General of Police, C.D. Vikramaratne, says police have recorded statements from 14 individuals with regard to the recent recovery of a hand grenade inside a church in Borella. He said orders have been given to conduct extensive investigations and to bring the suspects before the law. The General Secretary of Sri Lanka Freedom Party, Dayasiri Jayasekara, says his party has not taken a decision to withdraw from the government. He said the party is under a process of organising. He further said organising meetings at district level and establishing youth and women's organisations are taking place at present. He added that his party will continue to support the government while solving problems when working with the government. The Government Information Department says the public has been given many concessions by the government to achieve development targets set by the budget. It pointed out that 35 billion rupees have been allocated to provide fertilizer subsidies to the farmers from 2021 to 2022 Maha season. 10,000 million rupees have been allocated to improve yield of export crops. 2,000 million rupees have been given to develop small-scale irrigation canals. And that concludes the bulletin of local news.
From the very first day at school, teach your child the lesson of saving. Open a Sisal Bank account with People's Bank. Higher interest with more gifts and benefits.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
The Health Ministry said today 171 more patients recovered from COVID within last 24 hours. This brings the number of COVID-19 recoveries in the country to 567,871. Meanwhile, 11,274 patients are under medical care at present. Sri Lanka has recorded 594,319 cases so far, and 15,174 of them have died due to the virus. And that was the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
In Watchlight, Information and Communications Technology Agency of Sri Lanka announced that an agreement was signed between ICTA and the Ministry of Health recently to formulate a national digital healthcare blueprint. The blueprint serves as a comprehensive roadmap with standards, policies, guidance and specifications for implementation that will facilitate a higher quality of healthcare for citizens of Sri Lanka. And that came to you in Watchlight.
Coming up, World News.
Moving on to a bulletin of world news, first the headlines. The UK Prime Minister's staff accused of more lockdown parties. The government and embassy websites targeted in Ukraine cyber attack. Prince Andrew's accuser welcomes the decision to let the legal case continue. And now the world news in detail. Downing Street staff held two parties the night before Prince Philip's funeral at a time when COVID restrictions banned indoor mixing. The events, first reported by The Telegraph, took place on the 16th of April 2021 and went on until the early hours. Prime Minister Boris Johnson was not at either party, but it raises further questions about a culture of rule-breaking at Downing Street. The Prime Minister is facing calls to resign from the opposition and some senior Tories. More than a dozen Ukrainian government websites went down today in a cyber attack that also targeted embassies. The Foreign and Education Ministries were among those hit, along with embassies in the UK, US and Sweden. Before the sites went down, a message appeared warning Ukrainians to prepare for the worst. It was unclear who was behind the attack. The woman who has accused the Duke of York of sexually abusing her had praised a US judge's decision to allow her legal case to continue. Prince Andrew faces a civil case in the US after Virginia Giuffre sued him, claiming he abused her in 2001. He has consistently denied the claims. Ms. Giuffre said she was pleased with the ruling. The case can continue after the prince tried to have it dismissed. She said she is glad to have a chance to continue to expose the truth. Back to the headlines of the world news. The UK Prime Minister's staff accused of more lockdown parties. The government and embassy websites targeted in Ukraine cyber attack. Prince Andrew's accuser welcomes the decision to let the legal case continue. And that concludes the bulletin of World News.
Development News is brought to you by Let's take all out of the coconut tree and make the island thriving and prosperous. Call our hotline 1928. WhatsApp 070 400 1928.
The second phase of the Central Expressway from Mirigama to Kurunegala will be open to the public tomorrow under the patronage of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa. The Highways Minister Johnston Fernando said the distance of the second phase of the Mirigama and Kurunegala is 40.91 kilometers. The expressway has been built with 4 lanes. This stretch has been constructed by local contractors with local funds. 5 exchange centres with payment counters at Mirigama, Nakkalagamuwa, Dambukka, Kurunegala and Yagapitiya have been set up. And that was the development news.
Development News was brought to you by The coconut tree is well grown in almost all the parts of the island. It is an exceptional source of extra income. The shell, the husk and almost all the parts of the coconut tree makes you money, providing you with an excellent extra source of income. It will also help to nourish the economy of the country. You will be guided with all necessary informations regarding the coconut cultivation, with the novel cultivation techniques and all other related and upgraded informations by the Coconut Research Institute, Lunavilla. Call our hotline 1928. WhatsApp 070 400 1928.
Moving on to sports, first it's tennis. Australia has revoked tennis star Novak Djokovic's visa for a second time in a row over his right to remain in the country unvaccinated. The decision on health and good order grounds means he could be deported and gets a 3-year visa ban. However, the 34-year-old Serbian can still launch another legal challenge to remain in Australia. The men's tennis number 1 was scheduled to play in the Australian Open, which begins on Monday. In other tennis news, Britain's Andy Murray reached his first ATP Tour final since 2019 with a 3-set win over Riley Opelka at the Sydney Tennis Classic. The 34-year-old fought back from a set down to beat the 25th-ranked American 6-7, 6-8, 6-4, 6-4. In football news, the Confederation of African Football has dismissed a formal complaint lodged by Tunisia's Football Federation about their game with Mali ending 13 seconds early. In a statement, CAF said the African Cup of Nations Organizing Committee met on Thursday and rejected the protest but gave no further explanation. And finally in sports, it's cricket. England's sloppy performance was punished by a swashbuckling century from Australia's Travis Head on day 1 of the 5th Ashes Test in Hobart. Grabbing the chance to bowl first on the greenest of the surfaces with a pink ball, England was initially excellent in reducing the home side to 12 for 3. However, amid the early chaos, Marnus Labuschagne was dropped on naught. Labuschagne counter-attacked for 44 in a rapid stand of 71 with Head, who continued to climb into the England's attack in a partnership of 121 with Cameron Green. Travis Head made his second century of the series from 112 deliveries, only to be dismissed next ball for 101. Green fell for 74 shortly before rain ended the day with more than 30 overs unused and Australia on 241 for the loss of 6 wickets. And that was sports news.
Cash through NSP globally and win wonderful gifts locally. From October 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2022. Remit a minimum of $100 or an equivalent amount in any foreign currency 3 times through NSB U Trust.
Business news sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Moving on to business news, Nestle Lanka, the local unit of the Swiss food giant, is to borrow $45 million from Nestle Treasury Center, Middle East and Africa to cater to its foreign exchange requirements for this year. It appears that the move comes in the wake of the shortage of dollars in the domestic market, as Sri Lanka is currently facing a foreign currency exchange crisis. And that was business news.
Business news sponsored by
Cash through NSP globally and win wonderful gifts locally. Will you be the lucky winner of the NSP Golden Jubilee? 50 gold sovereigns for the top prize winner of the NSP Golden Jubilee. Scooters for the 10 second prize winners. iPhones for the 10 third prize winners. Mountain bikes for the 29 fourth prize winners. From October 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2022. Remit a minimum of $100 or an equivalent amount in any foreign currency 3 times through NSB U Trust.
The World Bank says although the worst of the pandemic on the South Asian economies, including Sri Lanka, may be behind them, the region is still vulnerable to rising consumer prices, financing conditions and the evolving Omicron variant of the coronavirus pandemic. However, the global multilateral lender said the region's central banks could stay more through 2022, while the global central banks move fast to end the pandemic-era policy support and follow it up with increasing interest rates. And that was economic news. The weather report is next.
The Weather Report.
And finally, on to the weather report. The Met Department says showers or thunder showers will occur at a few places in the central, Sabaragamuwa, Ua and southern provinces and in the Kalutara district. Mainly fair weather will prevail elsewhere. And that was the weather report. And to end this news broadcast, a recap of the main news headlines. The President presents scroll to the Mahanayaka of Sri Lanka Amarapura Mahanikaya. The Central Expressway from Mirigama to Kurunegala will be opened to the public tomorrow. The police entrusted with the responsibility of all railway stations. Plans made to operate train services minimizing hardships to the commuters. The Ceylon Petroleum Corporation decides to deliver 1,500 metric tons of diesel to the Ceylon Electricity Board daily. The police launched extensive investigations into finding a hand grenade from a church in Buralda. The SLFP General Secretary says his party has not decided to leave the government. In news overseas, the UK Prime Minister's staff accused of more lockdown parties. And in sports, Australia revokes tennis star Novak Djokovic's visa for a second time. And that concludes this news broadcast from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.